Hello and welcome to Stripping the Dipping. You're joined by your usual co-host, aka North London's finest, AMG Denz, and I can finally live up to the name because, as we all know, I have a lovely AMG. But it's not about me. Stripping the Dipping, as you know, we talk about anything and everything F1. And on this special day, I'd just like to also take the opportunity to thank every single listener, every single follower, every single guest that's been on the show because we've hit one of our biggest landmarks today in reaching 100 followers on Twitter. And I know to some people that might sound like a very minuscule number. I know to the special guest we have on again for his second appearance, 100 is probably like, what? But obviously, to like me and Georgina, and also F1 Black too, he's been a very prominent part of the show recently as well. It's great just to be connected with so many of you all, to have that support from you all, to have that engagement with you all. And honestly, I'm just so proud and so thankful, for the work that our other special, I can't really call her a special guest, but basically the boss, which is Georgina Donna, is in the building today as well to join us for this special episode too. And just to see just how the podcast started, to what it's growing into now and what it's going to be in the future as well. So, Georgina, hello there as well. Did you want to say anything before we introduce our guest formally today?
Yeah, so we have a special guest, but we can't call it as a special guest. Then I was like thinking, oh yeah, well Vincenzo did come at first, and this is the second one, so he must be talking about that. Then there was like she's the boss lady, and I'm like, oh, he's talking about me. So that was a random one. So yeah, to be here, to be the co-host for Denzel the Star, and ask so many hard questions from our special guest, because these questions can be only answered by him.
Oh,
Lots of
thank you
pressure.
for that.
Lots of pressure.
Indeed, indeed. And unless you guys were living underneath a rock or you guys didn't guess who the special man was with that very signature voice, very smooth, very silky, we've got Vincenzo Landino for his return appearance on Stripping the Dipping. Bro, how's everything going? How are you keeping?
Very, very good. Very, very little sleep. But doing very good. And it's Silverstone week, so it's a great week.
Exactly, like you said, spot on the money there as well, Vincenzo. It is race week. I know that we get lots of memes about that, and actually, there's a funny little segment we're going to add to the end of this show as well, just in relation to that. But yeah, it is huge, huge hype and excitement all around the world and in the world of obviously F1 because we're back home in the country where all began, Silverstone, with the first Grand Prix back in 1950, and we've got quite an amazing spectacle to look forward to. So before we get into our Silverstone breakdown, Vincenzo, I wanted to take a time machine with you. I wanted to take a bit of a DeLorean time machine back to a couple of months ago because
Okay.
you, sir, had
Yeah.
quite one of the awesome opportunities to go to, was it you went to the Miami Grand Prix, right?
I did not actually. I was supposed to, but I had a the birth of my daughter was about a week
Ah,
before, so I was unable to make it. But I live cool. I live about an hour away, so there was plenty of hype and buzz, and I was pretty well connected to folks that were there. So I got a lot of I got to experience a lot of extra FOMO that I really didn't want to experience.
that's always the case, isn't it? But that's
It
it's
is.
great as well. And it's amazing that we have someone like you that's closer to the action on that side too, because obviously it was the first debut race in Miami. Just wanted to get
Hmm.
your like take. What was the highlight of the entire event for you? I know that you didn't go, but like how was it perceived for you and people in the States? And was there
Yeah.
anything maybe yeah, differently that could be implemented the next time we go there?
I had the opportunity to head down there a little bit, not leading up to. So during the race, I had a chance to get down there and check some of the things that were going on, and I found it really, really refreshing to see all of the team, well, a lot of the teams putting efforts into pop up activations. Yeah, I was Williams had invited me to theirs early, and I got to check out what they were doing and setting up. And they were right next to the Pirelli shop, which is all right there on on South, close to South Beach. Um, Mercedes had a pop up. I believe Ferrari had a pop up. I didn't get again. I only got a chance to go down one day for some meetings and a few things to check out. But it was nice to see so much activity. And I know that in the days after I was there was even more, parties and activations. I know that there was like the Aston Martin dealership, even up by me, which is about an hour away from Miami. They were showing off the Aston Martins, the cars, the F1 cars at the dealership here. Even the Ferrari dealership up here in Palm Beach was doing some stuff with Formula One. A lot of the car clubs in the area made their ways down there. So there was a lot of excitement and buzz all up and down the South Florida coast. And again, like I said, I found it just refreshing and exciting that the teams turned this event, the Miami event, into a top tier. And I heard this from numerous folks inside of teams. This is a top priority event for us. This is a top tier event from a marketing perspective, at least. This is a top tier event for us. So they put their efforts into showing up, making sure they activated, making sure they created something exciting for fans to come and interact with. For me, that was, aside from the race, which I also wasn't super happy about for obvious reasons, but also because I think the racing was okay. I think just that buzz was good for the U.S. Now, I know there's plenty of stories. If you look around and dig deep enough, there's plenty of things that didn't go right. But it's a first-year GP, so let's give it a fair shot. Things aren't going to be perfect the first time around ever. And I know that because it's an American Grand Prix, people are very quick to want to cut it for next year or cut it. Let's not do it again. There was mistakes. Okay, well, let's give it a chance. We know it's going to be around for at least 10 years, so let's give it a chance and see what happens. But I'm excited for where it's going and the excitement that the group, the organizers here in Miami are really, taking charge, and they are trying to make it as exciting as possible. And, with Formula One growing, it's only going to help having that GP in a very popular destination, an tropical or exotic location, as exotic as you can get in the United States. So yeah, it was good. It's good. It can only mean good things, and you know what? We'll see how it goes. Give it a second year, a third year before they work out all the kinks, and then we can decide if it's good or not.
Exactly, and I think that's a really great kind of take on it as well, Vincenzo, with just, the entertainment value that was added there, just how much emphasis there was on, the experience for the fans, because I think a lot of the times, especially in recent years, we've talked about like Formula One and what's being offered to the fans, and, creating a package and almost making every single race like a Super Bowl like experience. And definitely, even just from this side of the pond, watching from Europe, you could definitely infer that atmosphere and that energy and just like how much it meant, to the sport, the organizers, the teams,
Sure.
and even from a social perspective too. We had some of the controversy with the Miami Garden stuff, and Lewis was doing some work, and I think some members of FOM were also trying to reach out to the local community. So it seems that, any tensions have been cleared, and hopefully in the future it will continue to go on that point. So really great to hear those things too. And as it's the one, well, I'm going to call it the 100 follower edition. I'm going to tag Georgina in it as well. And I'm going to let her ask you some questions too. So, Georgina,
Sure.
I'm tagging you in.
Yeah, okay. So, when it comes to me, I have all the financial questions for Vincenzo.
Go for it.
Okay,
I hope I can answer them.
I know that you can answer this. So, my first question. We saw the article that you published regarding the Apple and MLS TV deal. So,
Yes.
my question to you is, F1 media is on the rising tide of fame in the US, and there's an Apple, as I mentioned earlier, Apple and MLS TV deal happening. Then especially the renewals and with the ESPN, and then data suggested that the higher viewerships as well. So this is actually a two-part question. My first one is, what does this Apple MLS deal means not only to F1 but also to Liberty Media? And the second question is the pros and cons of these recent peaked interest of the fans towards the sport, as new fans, and there's already bad blood on these new fans versus all sport fans. There's a huge drama going on. you know so
Right.
there has to be some drama, and there has to be some pros and cons with these new additions as well. So what's your take on that?
I really believed that the opportunity, there was a bigger opportunity. I still think there's a bigger opportunity. Let me clarify. I think there's a greater opportunity for Formula One with US media rights. The Apple MLS deal, to me, proved that in a way that MLS is, I would still say that Formula One has more excitement than, and I watch soccer. I watch European soccer. I don't watch MLS. I'm just not a fan of it, the product. And their viewership numbers are not fantastic. Their viewership numbers are, I don't know if they are the lowest, but they're pretty low if you compare to other sport leagues. They've got to be the lowest if you compare them to the top 4 sports leagues in the United States. They're definitely the lowest. But Apple spent $250 million a year. It's $2.5 billion for a 10-year deal, which to me signaled that there is opportunity, especially in streaming, for Formula One to get more money out of one of those 4 bidders. I had written an article early June, saying how there 4 bidders had emerged, and the 4 bidders that emerged were Netflix, ESPN, which already owned the rights, NBC Universal, and Amazon. I thought that the Apple deal meant that potentially we could see Apple, because Apple now they're starting to do Major League Baseball, so they are understanding live sports. Netflix is the only one of the big streamers that doesn't really do live sports. Amazon does some live sports right now. So I thought, okay, Netflix, this could be a signal as to how much money they may want to spend, or they could spend. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Georgina, you mentioned, ESPN ended up getting the deal. Or I think on Friday there were a few sources that mentioned that ESPN ended up getting the deal, and it's between $75 and $90 million. We don't know exactly how much per year until 2025. So it's only for the next 3 seasons, 23, 24, 25. Currently, ESPN's only paying $5 million a year for those rights here in the US. So it's a tremendous jump in how much they're paying for it. There's also a few other things I found pretty interesting in the deal, where ESPN is most likely going to still put races on ABC or ESPN, but they also are going to have the flexibility to put some races on their ESPN Plus streaming service exclusively. So that'll be interesting to see how that competes with like an F1 TV. Does it make enough of a dent? The diehard fans are going to obviously have F1 TV. The more general sports fan in the US may already have ESPN Plus. If you have the bundle package, ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus all come together in a package deal for a relatively affordable price. So if you are one of those people, you now could get, ESPN race, a Formula One race on ESPN Plus a couple times a year. Thought that was interesting. The other aspect of the bid that I found interesting was that Amazon had put together a bid for $100 million or more, and they also were providing the right. Again, this is all rumored, to sublicense to a linear broadcast network like an ABC, CBS. Those are linear broadcasts here in the US. Comcast's, the NBC Universal their deal was also very similar to ESPN, and they would have also put some of their races on their Peacock streaming service, in addition to linear coverage on NBC and the USA Network. Comcast is a partner. Comcast and Sky is a subsidiary of Comcast, and so they are a big partner outside the US. So I thought that could have been the ultimate play, but ESPN, I think, made the right move in going with ESPN, renewing. They know that there's more work to be done for the growth of the sport, so don't change things right now. I think what's going to happen, and I'm tying this back, I promise. The deal only being 3 years instead of a long-term, 10-year plus deal. I think that's where Formula One is hoping or betting on ESPN taking what they've already done, the legwork that they've done over the past years of having the sport, helping them take it to the next level. And then when that next rights deal goes in 2026, essentially, which we should be getting new regulations at that time. There's a lot of new things in the sport that are coming at that point, right? Potentially new teams in 2026. I think now F1 is saying, okay, we can resell the rights again in 3 years for a far greater number, probably much bigger than what Apple just bought the MLS rights to. So I think MLS creates kind of a benchmark. That deal creates a benchmark, and then in 3 years, as the growth of the sport goes even more, and that's where I think Formula One doesn't want to lock themselves in past the 2026 regulation change. If we do get new teams, they don't want to lock themselves in past that and then sell the rights too cheaply. That's what I think is going on. So anyway, long story short, I think the Apple MLS deal is a great benchmark for Formula One, and they are in the driver's seat. They're getting plenty more money now out of ESPN, and it's only going to help them keep a little bit of consistency and growth in the US. Yeah, so the ESPN deal, I think it's a good move for Formula One. They understand that ESPN right now creates consistency. There is, especially for the American viewer, they're able to watch it in a familiar place. So as the sport is continuing to grow, I don't think they don't want to rock the boat too much. They don't want to change things too much to where people get confused as to where they're watching their sport, where they can get their coverage, their highlights, so to speak, all of that. So it's a good thing. Also, 2026 will bring new regulations in Formula One, potentially new teams in Formula One. Hopefully, we're hoping that happens by 26. If that's the case, Formula One is making the right move by not selling the rights or locking themselves in too long of a deal to where they're now, ESPN or whoever would be underpaying for a sport that in 2025, 2026 is now vastly more popular. Maybe there's an American team in the sport. Maybe there's an American driver in the sport, and now they've sold the rights, too low. So it allows them to pivot in 2026, sell the rights for a much greater number potential. And that's where I see the MLS Apple situation being a benchmark. It's, $250 million a year becomes a benchmark. And if there's an American team, if there's an American driver, let's say the sport continues growing the way it has been, now by 2026, you're looking at easily them being, Formula One being able to sell the rights for 200 million plus, instead of locking in at, 70 million, let's say, for a 10-year deal right now. And so that's why I think that's where I kind of tie the two in together, that MLS Apple deal and ESPN getting the rights. I think ESPN is right now positioned best to continue growing the sport for Formula One.
But I think my point of view is that the more deals that they get, they're not going to, from a business side, they're not going to pour money or cash into a deal where they think that it's not going to benefit them. And the same time with these deals, just like you mentioned, for the countries or for the regions that F1 TV is not available, they can easily get that money from these deals, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. I think so. The U.S. is kind of a unique situation too, right? Because we do have F1 TV, and I think that's probably why Formula One chose not to go with an exclusive streamer, because we have the exclusive streaming and with F1 TV. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
F1 TV Pro. I can watch, every race. I have all of that for a relatively inexpensive. Actually, from what I know you guys pay over there for Sky, it's significant. I mean, we pay $80 a year for F1 TV Pro. So that's $8 a month. That's not even $8 a month. $6 a month. It's really nothing. So for them to go, like, let's say Formula One ended up selling to a exclusive streamer, I think that could have cannibalized quite a bit their F1 TV product. People already may have Netflix, so now it's like, why do I need to spend another $80 a year if I already have Netflix or I already have Amazon Prime? So I think that, like, again, and ESPN, I know we got kind of cut off, so I don't know if I made this point, but I'll make it again. ESPN is bundled in with Disney and Hulu here in the States. So there's a triple package you can buy for relatively inexpensive. I think it's about $11 a month to get all three of those services. And if you have those services, if you're just a general sports fan here in the United States, you would have access to some games or some races on ESPN Plus, but you may not want to pony up the dollars for Formula One TV, especially if you're not that much of a diehard fan. So I think that's where it gets them. It keeps them in that ecosystem. With ESPN being part of a larger, being part of Disney, that has to be massively attractive as well. There's a greater distribution play, mainstream distribution. I still think streaming is great, but there's nothing like saying the race was on ABC or, Disney bought the rights. That's kind of right now where I'm looking at why it was a good move for them to go where they did, as opposed to trying to shake it up. And it would have been great. I thought it would have been great for Netflix to buy it, but I think the logistics of that right now, while the sport is still, growing, it's surely not, it's not like it's the UK where it's ever so popular. It's still growing. So to kind of gate it or put it behind a paywall of a streaming service, it probably was not the right move. And I thought of that because there was times where I thought that, Amazon or Netflix would have been great. But the more I think about it, the more I see this being a smart move for them. Safer. It's definitely safer. It's not the most, radical move for sure. Radical would have been going to Netflix exclusively, especially if Netflix didn't want to provide any sub-licensing to a linear distributor. So if it was exclusively on Netflix and none of the races were ever going to be shown on, an ABC or an NBC or anything like that, Fox, now you're cutting off a large portion of the population that doesn't have the service or is not going to go watch sports on that service. It's just not there yet, right? It's not ingrained in people's minds that, I watch sports on Netflix. No, you don't. You can't watch sports on Netflix. They don't have live TV. Most people still don't think Amazon to watch Thursday night NFL football, even though it's on there. Most people aren't even thinking of Apple as their destination for Friday night baseball, even though Apple spent a lot of money to buy 2 games per week for Friday nights. It's just not there yet. So, and those are major sports leagues that I just mentioned. Those aren't F1 that are trying to grow. So yeah, the ESPN deal, and ESPN, listen, they're 24/7 sports channel. It's really that's a great spot to have Formula One being talked about all day long, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting right now with it. But who knows? My mind can change if we get new data or information. I
But what do you
reserve the
think
right,
about,
Georgina. I reserve the
yeah,
right to change my mind.
yes, you do. Yes, you do. But what do you think about the pros and cons when it comes to fans? Because as I already mentioned earlier, there's a huge issue, or well, maybe it's only on Twitter. I don't know, but there's
Yeah.
an issue with the new fans and the old sports fans
In regards to this deal or in general?
in general. Because in regard to these deals, the more deals that they make, they
Hmm.
bring or generate more new fans. So, do you think there won't be any issues? I mean, we've seen all these drama dragging on, and the new fans, or the old fans, claiming that these new fans have no respect for the sport, or
Yeah,
or any interest, things like that.
sure.
There are issues. So, do you think it's going to be way huge? The case will be huge, or the worst, or there will be good coming out of generating new fans and the bad blood drama.
I think the biggest challenge right now, and if I'm understanding the question and kind of the direction of this correctly, so correct me if I'm not interpreting it accurately, but the direction I see most fans take is it's either wow, this is great for the sport, or oh my god, we hate Americans. That's actually at the
Yeah,
core. That seems to be at the core of the issue. It's not even so much the new fans; it's more of it's the American fans. And listen,
it's the US fan.
yeah, and Americans don't do themselves any favors with certain behaviors. With you know, like at the Miami Grand Prix, their police escort across to the podium, and uh, the focus was on these expensive dinners, and there's all this, it's a festival, and oh, by the way, there's a race. That doesn't help. I don't disagree with those fans that say that, because yeah, it's a different way of enjoying a sport. But if you look at a sport like the Super Bowl, which is, I'm not even arguably, it is the largest single sporting event in the United States. It's all about the pomp and circumstance around the event. You have the commercials, that becomes such a massive talk of the event, the game itself. People talk about the commercials. People talk about the halftime show. There's entertainment. It's spectacle. It's the biggest thing of the year. And so I understand why certain people are saying, you know what, this is racing. We want to watch a good race. We want to enjoy the sport the way it is. We don't want to Americanize it. Unfortunately, the sport itself is owned by an American company that is a publicly traded company that needs to answer to shareholders when it comes to making money. And so if creating entertainment around an event, you got to remember, and not that you guys don't know this, but these are 3-day events. These aren't just a 1-day final and that's it, right? It's not like a Champions League match final, or a Super Bowl, or trying to think of other single 1-day sports, but it's not. It's a 3-day event, and the first 2 days are, the first day is practice, which is the teams need it, but it's a little more laid back. The second day is half laid back, half qualifying, so it's a little more intense. And then the third day is the intense day, right? But for the fan, for an average fan walking through the gate saying, okay, I don't care too much about practice, or I don't care too much about watching other than qualifying in the race. What are you going to give them to do on the site? What are you going to give them to do to spend money, right? At the end of the day, that's what you need to do. And I think that's where the American sports way, the way of the American sport, they know how to create a draw. There's a big draw. And so to get back to your question, that's where the big divide is, at least the one I see. People don't want to accept that there's changes coming to the sport. There's new things happening at events. Events are becoming probably a little less accessible, which I don't agree with, right? With the,
Yeah.
when these price, with insane prices that we saw in Miami, and even, you know, Silverstone's not exactly inexpensive either, from what I've heard. I have never been. Monaco is not exactly accessible, right? Even if the ticket to the race is not inexpensive, everything around Monaco is not easy to, you know, not easy to get to. There's nowhere to stay. There's flights. So like there's all of that kind of stuff comes into play. Miami didn't help. Again, we'll go back to the Miami situation. Surely didn't help with how much they were charging for grandstands and how much they were charging for you know, the more exclusive experiences. But all of the other experiences around the Miami GP were also very expensive. There was not as much, you know, free or low cost, you know, for families. You know, there was folks that said to me, you know, for a family of 4 or 5, you know, this is a $10,000 plus at the very minimum weekend. I mean, that's an expensive weekend for a regular family of 4 or 5. So that's where it seems like the worldwide audience says we don't want the Americanization, because they see that kind of that money being spent. They see all of this pomp and circumstance that doesn't add to racing. It doesn't make it a better race product. And again, I don't disagree. I get that. If we look at Spa, one of the organizers at Spa, I forget exactly who it was, maybe the commercial officer at the Spa, you know, the Belgian Grand Prix. He made a comment that, you know, because they don't want to lose the race, and because there's a lot of speculation of losing Spa, there's a divide right there, Georgina. There's a divide. The race fans I don't want to lose Spa. Do you want to lose Spa?
No, I don't want to lose Spa.
one of the best tracks.
Yeah.
If not the best track, right? So that's where we get great racing. It's got so much history, but they don't have all the entertainment, and they don't have all of the fancy stuff going on around it. You're in the middle of the forest, you know, where the actual track is. You're not in a city. You're not in, and so what does the commercial officer of Spa say? Well, if we have to Americanize it, we'll do it the American way. Like, so they're understanding that. But when you hear things like that, especially if you live in another, you know, you live outside the US, you hear things like that and you're like, okay, so we're going to lose our identity in order to just become more American, or create more festival experience, as opposed to making it better racing. And so that's where you're seeing so many people getting upset. And then of course it doesn't help when you have fans come in through Drive to Survive that don't really know a lot of, know what they're talking about, which is okay. Everyone's been new to a sport at some point, but it just compounds itself. It's not one thing. It's not just a bunch of new people from Drive to Survive, because I think in and of itself, by itself, if none of this other stuff was happening, you'd be like, okay, it's just a new fan who doesn't exactly know. They'll learn, or like we can help them. But all of that happening at the same time, where you're talking about removing iconic tracks, changing the structure of weekends, now that's when things start to bubble up and get worse and worse. And so I think that's where we're at, especially, and Twitter is just a fire hose of people spewing whatever they want, right? So it's pretty unfiltered. So you get the worst of the worst on there. But I think that's where we're hearing the most, is because of those types of things.
Actually, you made sense. That's why I asked the question, because I think you have the information exactly to explain why it is happening. So basically, if you guys are joining just now, so what he was saying is that, well, people don't like the Americanization because of the way that they're doing. The organizers in US are different than the organizers in other countries. So there's an issue because most of the fans are regular fans. So there's a barrier in between them. How much are you paying for Sky, Denz, there in UK?
Wow, that's an interesting one, Georgina, because like even with Sky, so not to give people a history lesson, essentially, with
I think Denz got rid of
F1,
Sky because he bought the AMG, right? He had to get rid
Yeah,
of it.
those cost-saving measures, Vincenzo. You know, especially with gas prices too. Oof, that car is thirsty. But no, Georgina, it's a good question, but it's interesting because even in the UK, Formula One is marketed in a very unique way, and at least from my experience following the sport from the '90s, it was on what we call ITV at one stage. Then it was on BBC, which obviously everyone knows about, the British Broadcasting Company. And then I think around the early 2010s, that's when Sky or Sky B is the parent company, then bought the rights over to Formula One. And at the time, I think they included it as part of the Sky Sports package. So you could get basically Sky F1 along with, Sky Sports 1, Sky Sports 2, which have like your Premier League matches, your cricket, your golf, and stuff like that too. So the better person for that question would probably be my mom because it's still in her name, bless her. But yeah, like, to add to what Vincenzo was saying as well, it's so intriguing just to see the growth of the sport from both the consumer and obviously the business perspective as well. If you can obviously branch out and make the sport accessible through different variants or different like media um vocal points, then I think that's good because it will ultimately expose the sport and give it exposure in places it hasn't ever been before. But then, like Vincenzo correctly mentioned too, there's obviously a business perspective to it. Obviously Liberty Media, they've been so ace, at trying to basically rejuvenate sport, trying to basically expand it in different areas that hadn't gone before. Obviously, we've got the Kyalami thing in the background, which is amazing, and I think a really cool thing for the sport to finally go to Africa again and to get that experience. So yeah, just like it's really all encompassing and it's great to see. And I'll kind of tag in for Georgina then and like go for the next question, Vincenzo. My
Sure.
one was more around just like the championship. So just to set the scene, this
Yeah.
week is round 10 of the FIA F1 World Championship. We're nearly halfway into the season because there's only 22 races this year. And essentially, the two big dogs at the front have been Red Bull. And I'm not even going to do the Italian accent, man, because Vincenzo, you just say Ferrari in such a. I think I need to actually, sample Vincenzo's voice anytime he says Ferrari because it's just like music to my
Do it.
ear. But, yeah, I need to. I'll give you some commission on that as well, bro. Don't worry.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's been intriguing just to see, Ferrari kind of play a more vocal point in this championship. But then, unfortunately, through some unfortunate turns of event, we've had Charles, like, not finish two races where, he was leading or, where he would have definitely been up there. And then also, I'll get into science probably a bit later too, but again, he's there, but not quite. But the kind of main question that I wanted to ask you, Vincenzo, was, where do you see Ferrari heading into the middle part of this championship? And do you think they could still win the championship at this stage?
I'm a pessimist, so I'm going to say no. I don't think they can. Where do I think they are? They are firmly in second place. They're clearly better than the teams behind them.
You mean Mercedes?
Mercedes, Alpine. Although the Alpine seems to be making some strides, which is reliability may be an issue, but I'd be curious to see how they finish out the season. But yeah, Mercedes mostly, right? I think there is some sort of a three horse race, but I don't think it's going to be as close as we hope or want it to be. Ideally, we'd love for three teams from three drivers from three different teams to be fighting for the World Drivers' Championship, and we'd love for three teams to be fighting for the Constructors' Championship. Listen, I hate to say this because a couple weeks ago, I was furious. I actually turned off the TV when Leclerc had to DNF. First time I turned off a race. I don't think I've ever turned off a race. That was the first time. I was just so frustrated, and I think they're firmly in second. The Red Bull looks unbeatable. It really does. I know it's close, and I know that they're not miles ahead in terms of the end of the race, but I mean the last race without that safety car, I think Max could have been pretty pretty far ahead at the end, and the car just looks night and day different than everybody else's. They're not struggling with some of the same issues. Of course, they've got, the reliability. They've got to worry about that too, and they've got certain things that happen from time to time, like the DRS wing, that issue. But those all seem so inconsequential when you see how fast the car is, how consistent the drivers are with their laps. Checo's pushing Max, which is, who's ever
Completely
really
new.
pushed Max? Yeah, I mean, no one's ever really pushed Max at Red Bull. So I think he's put that. That's a good thing to have. They have a clear 1-2 going on, so it's very clear that Max is the number one. Ferrari does not have a clear 1 and 2. They still have not made it clear who's 1 and 2. So you've got both drivers who feel like they're fighting for the championship consistently, which is not a bad thing when you are in Mercedes' spot. They don't really have to say, "Oh, George is our new number one." They don't even have to have that conversation. It's clearly Lewis, but they don't even have to broach that topic because they're not fighting for, first place right now.
Mhm.
And that was the same situation Ferrari had last year. Sainz and Leclerc were fighting for, third, fourth in the championship for themselves and third in the constructors. So they never really had to battle each other. Right now, they're in a situation where they have to battle each other. It would be great if the team could make it clear as to, how things should work in the championship or, in race day. I just think that I think Red Bull, and I hate to give Dr. Marco the credit because I was pissed when he said this, but I think he's right. I don't think Ferrari can keep up with, engineering throughout the year and continuing to make the car better and finding ways to get the most out of the car. And that's just that's me being a pessimist. There's some of my Ferrari Twitter friends that all say that I'm too much of a pessimist, but that's how I keep myself at least from getting overly excited. That's where I think we stand right now.
That's an interesting take, Vincenzo. Man, it saddens me to see you like that, bro. Because even for me as a Mercedes fan, looking up at you, like I'm like, these guys at least have pace. At least their car isn't like, bouncing up and down like an angry kangaroo. But I understand your sentiments as well, and I think it's good that you're being realistic with what's going on. Because traditionally, yes, like you mentioned, Red Bull do have an upper hand when it comes to developing a car throughout a season. But I would not take that away from this special magic that resides at Maranello and the team, and just generally as well. I mean, science, which I'm gonna come back onto later. I think there's definitely
Sure.
an honest discussion that needs to be had there. But in terms of Charles, I think he's having one of his best seasons in terms of his driving, in terms of his heart. I actually did like a session with another Ferrari fan by the name of David Noble. For guys who don't know him, make sure you check him out. Great Ferrari fan, awesome guy. And we're just talking about how Charles is so fired up, and there's like he's almost reminiscent of like a modern day Jules Villeneuve, Alain Prost, and a lot of these drivers, Ferrari drivers, that have that kind of like charisma and that passion. And I would say, to be fair, like if Ferrari can get on top of the reliability, they might still be able to salvage something here because, like to be fair, like Charles, I don't think has done anything wrong other than, the blooper, I think it was Imola. He's been really unfortunate, with the engine failure in Barcelona, where he drove the most perfect race. He drove beautifully up until he had the turbo failure. Then obviously again as well, we had the Monaco situation where again, the kind of typical Ferrari communication wasn't clear with the strategy. And I feel that, they kind of tripped themselves over, but we already discussed that. And then again, even in Baku, where, he needed to at least get P2 to kind of keep things, keep Max on his toes, then there's another reliability issue, which is not great. And actually other Ferrari powered teams had the same kind of issues too. But,
right.
If they can do something about that, I still think at least with Charles, there's half an opportunity, and I think I'd still be quite optimistic in that sense. But like you said, anything in Formula One could happen, and that's why we're so like infused about it. But just before I bring Georgina back in as well, Vincenzo, another thing I wanted to ask you on a similar theme of is we know that Ferrari, whether you say they had an advantage or whether it's just the natural kind of thing that happened, Ferrari obviously had that like engine sanction back in 2019. So for a
Hmm.
long time, Ferrari were kind of like, okay, cool, we're just gonna focus towards the 22 regulations, make sure that we're all patterned and everything's like raring to go for that generation. You know, it seemed like they were like gonna be, like very, very, very hard to beat and untouchable. And up until recently, it did seem like that. But the kind of question I wanted to ask you, Vincenzo, is if the worst happens, which is Ferrari don't secure the championship this year, whether that's in the guise of the drivers' championship or the constructors' championship, how much pressure do you think there's going to be for the likes of Matteo Binotto and the more senior parts of the Ferrari team, leadership team, in terms of job stability going forward? Because I know that, that the Tifosi, they don't make jokes at all. I was even saying to Dr. Obbs the other day, like
Yeah.
Vincenzo and the Italian army, I don't want to get on the mad side of them. It means a lot, and you guys are overdue a championship. So if it doesn't happen this year, how much emphasis and how much pressure is there going forward into the next couple of seasons, with Ferrari being close, but not quite close enough to, you know, do it just like, outright?
I'm. I would. I would. Man, I would think that really it I don't want to say it all falls on his shoulders, but it does, right?
Mhm.
I would think that if they don't get it done this season, I, I can't see any scenario where he wouldn't be under absolute immense pressure to to do it next year, where it's not like you have to get it done next year or that's it.
Mhm.
Um, if at all, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just been too much. The thing is, like you said, it's that kind of like that stuff that happens at Monaco that gets you frustrated, right?
Mhm.
It's things like that when you see that because that's to me that's leadership, right? That's a leadership issue. That wasn't Leclerc. Leclerc didn't do anything wrong, and even Signs to an extent didn't do anything wrong. He's doing what he's being empowered to do. I'm going to push back because there's no one, you know, there's no leadership to tell me I can't, or there's nobody there to push back on me. So to me, that just shows that there's a big, I don't want to say a bigger problem, but definitely a bigger challenge than just, oh, reliability. Like, okay, we can fix reliability. It's like we need leadership. We need you need to be able to manage the drivers. You need to be able to manage uh, the team itself. And I don't know. I don't know if Binotto is, maybe it's just his personality that he's so laid back, which is a very uh, is characteristic of Italians. Maybe that's not going to show it, but he
Mhm.
seems to be. You look at, and I'm not saying that these guys are right, but you look at like a Horner or a Toto Wolf, and they seem to be very fired up, passionate, constantly, and I'd love to see that out of Binotto once in a while. I really would. Like, it'd be nice to give us some passion and fire. Are you? I understand you're pissed, but show us you're pissed once in a while. Show us that you're upset at what happened.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, he's got to be ultimately responsible. So I would say that he doesn't get it done this year. It's 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 going to be a short leash for him.
Yep. And I agree with you on that one too, Vincenzo. And you made some really great points there too. And to add to them, like in one sense, with Mattia Binotto, you can see how the team have gone forward in terms of this their approach to developing a car, and sometimes they have actually been like the front runners in terms of even the strategy and kind of like putting Red Bull under pressure, which we rarely see these days. But again, like you said too, like there might be an air of complacency. There might just be an air of this too much calm when things need to be a lot better. Things need to be a lot more synchronized. And there's still, I think, a lot of remnants of the old regime when you had like Arriva Bene and you had Seb Vettel kind of coming on the radio and like dictating the strategy to the engineers. When it should be the engineers dictating the strategy to the driver because they have all the telemetry and they have all the data too. And I can empathize with you on that because even in the Mercedes camp, we have that a bit sometimes too. With when you come in, you see these ridiculously slow pit stops that cost Lewis, a third or fourth place. And yes, it's only third or fourth place. It's not, a championship winning kind of thing. But
Correct.
every difference right now, every single thing you do makes a huge impact because of how closely knit the competition is this year. And then also when you hear the miscommunication sometimes between Bono and Lewis, or sometimes you kind of hear the team leaning on Lewis, like when it's them that need to be more authoritative with making decisions, high pressured moments, is a very relatable thing across both teams. So I think, we can both see eye to eye on that one for sure. So no, it is interesting. And,
Exactly.
I hope that it's not the case. I personally, if it's not a silver or a black car, I'd love to see a red car there personally, and not a Red Bull. But it is very intriguing, for sure. And
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
tag
and winning
Georgina back in. Sorry, go ahead.
and
Sorry.
winning does that. Winning does that to you, right? You taste success or you start to win, and it amplifies problems. It doesn't make them easier. It amplifies them. So whatever challenges you are having, winning can mask a lot of that. And early in the season, you're winning, things are happening, great, car's fast, whatever. But and I probably, I don't know if I will, but if you go back and look at the early season, like maybe go back, watch those races and just listen to the radios, you'll probably hear similar things. You may hear, but winning masks it. So maybe it didn't matter that Carlos pushed back on an engineer or an engineer didn't say anything because they won the race anyway, right? So no big deal. But when things go wrong, that's when everything gets amplified, right? Or that's now things are amplified because you were winning early and you were the expectation of success is there. So yeah, like last year was a perfect scenario. There was zero expectation. So finishing where we did, having a strong backstretch to the season, that was great. Sainz was extremely consistent. There was so much positive, but we weren't fighting for 1 and 2. So it was like, okay, it just flies under the radar. But now if you're fighting for 1 and 2, you can't fly under the radar anymore. Everything is scrutinized, overly scrutinized. And so I think we'll see how the rest of the year plays out, but you can't, if there's a lot more just like leadership gaps that I like I said, especially Monaco I thought was the ultimate breakdown in leadership there. If things like that happen, that's when that's how okay, it's time to cut. I think it would be time to cut ties because you don't see those types of things at winning operations, right? Or they don't allow them to happen. Again, I don't listen to the Red Bull radios. I don't listen to the Mercedes radios probably as much as you all do with Mercedes, but you don't seem to hear those types of things. And I think that's, yes, you'll hear Max complain or whatever it might be, but they just let him blow steam off and that's it, right? It's not really where he's pushing back on them so much. They're entrusting the engineers, they're entrusting the team to make the right call because they have all the data in front of them. That's how it's supposed to work.
True.
Yeah. All right.
No,
Well, actually, you made sense, right?
I don't know. I try to make sense.
Well, it's very pretty clear because for all the questions that we ask, you give very clear answers and it's convincing.
Thank you. I appreciate
Well,
that.
my question to you is actually not regarding the races or the radios. Well, it's more like well, as I told you, I have so many financial questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm bringing all the cash questions to you.
Sure.
Recently, there were a few gatherings by the FIA officials, and then there were few articles that regarding Pensolaim, the current president, where he said that the FIA is under debt, and it's not because of him, but it's the previous issues from the past, and he's trying to fix it. My question to you is, what's your take on that, and how on earth can FIA be under debt?
I haven't followed this enough, so it's definitely something you actually brought to my attention. I hadn't seen it or heard it for whatever reason. I mean, the FIA is, they are kind of this governing body over a bunch of different motorsports, and so I would assume that whatever happened, it can't, we can't blame Ben Sulayem on whatever's happened. He just came in, in December, so whatever's going on or went on in that kind of old way of thinking, he can't be to blame for it. So if he's trying to make changes, if he's going to try to do things differently, he has to also first clean up whatever happened, or whatever was happening before him. But I don't know. I truly, there's an answer for you that I don't know. I'm not sure how they, or what that means for anything, like FIA being in debt. What is that? How does that affect, or how can that affect? I mean, essentially, you have so many motorsports under FIA, right? It's not just F1. There's, I mean, we can name a bunch of different, motorsports series that the FIA has under their governance. So, I mean, that you've got like World Rally, Endurance, Formula E. I think you've got Rallycross. So all of those things would be affected by FIA being under debt. But I don't see how them being in debt would ever affect the sport anyway, because, and this could be foolish of me, but this is just me thinking right now off the top of my head. Again, this is not something I had known a ton about, so pardon my ignorance on the subject, but I would think that even with the FIA being in debt, first of all, debt is not always a bad thing with businesses. So with them having or carrying some sort of debt, maybe they are not able to do as much in terms of promotion or being as progressive as they like with the sports. But ultimately, the sports are still running themselves, with or without the FIA. The FIA just kind of gets to give their blessing on certain things. The FIA gets to be the overarching or the overruling body that says this track is allowed, this track isn't allowed, right? Those types of things. So I don't know, Georgina. That I would have to look. I'd have to do a little more digging and research into what kind of debt are they talking about. Is it debt that affects? How does it affect the Formula One, or how does it affect the sports? What is he doing to fix it and remedy it? I don't even know. Like those are the things I haven't looked into enough. So I'll look into it deeper for you, but also for myself, and try to understand a little bit more of what's going on and why it was brought up, right? Like, interesting that he immediately fired off and said that, well, it was the old regime, which is fine. He's trying to cover his own he's cover his ass, right? But
Yeah.
but at the same time, it just seems like, I mean, it's all political, right? So where's the money being spent? What is it being spent on? Who's gay? If you follow the money, I guess the answers come. But I haven't dug deep enough into this, or I haven't dug into it really at all, to give
But
you
how
a straight
do
clear
the FIA actually earn money? Where does the money come from for them? I mean, from the previous episode, we asked how the F1 earns money and the tracks earns money and all. But I want to ask this. This is actually an extra question that just came out into my mind. How do these FIA as an organization, they are the government body, but how do they earn money?
rights. A lot of it is rights. A lot of it is the sporting activities in general.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what? Other than that, I don't know. I believe there's a portion of like I think the entry fees go so every team has to there's entry fees each year.
Yeah.
I believe that there's a portion, if not all, I'm not 100% sure, that goes to the FIA. And those are not cheap either. You're talking, 3 million. I think they're talking for next season. Some of those entries, like I think Mercedes entry fee next year could be almost like $5 million. So there's those ways. Actually, I just pulled it up. Let me look at it. 2022 entry fees. There's a points-based fee. Mercedes would be their total entry fee would be 4.8 million. Red Bull 3.9 million. Ferrari 2.4, McLaren 2.1, all the way down to Haas at 577,000. So you're looking at roughly $20 million right there just in entry fees. And then, of course, there's also everything that has to do with the tracks and the events themselves. I don't know what those percentages are, though. I don't. Again, it's not one of the things that I deeply dig into. I don't believe they carry as much of a like an operating revenue as F1 would. I can't see why they would need it. But they also, there's things like FAA has things like charities. So there's ways for them to disperse money. So take in whatever they take in, they can also put out and save on whatever, they can shelter certain dollars there. But I don't know the full revenue model for the FIA. Well, first of all, I say revenue model. I believe they're a nonprofit anyway, so technically they don't have to make dollars. But I don't know where they're getting the dollars in the first place, other than things like entry fees. I'd have to dig a little deeper into the FIA specifically. It's never been something I've genuinely been interested in, is how the FAA operates.
Yeah, and that's fair enough as well, Vincenzo, because again, there's like so many different branches and organizations and bodies, and it is kind of interesting as well, like how they are self-sufficient or how they as well, like, like sort
Um,
themselves out. Go on, Georgina, sorry, were you going to say
Yep.
something? Okay, I don't think Georgina was going to say anything, so I'll continue. Yeah, just like, because again, it's just like any organization, they have like staff members to pay in wages and different things to
Sure.
invest in as well. So yeah, there's so many different facets to that, and it's an intriguing one for sure. So Vincenzo, kind of moving on to the next question, I wanted to get on the next hot topic of the week. It's been pretty much the driver market because we had some earlier news this week that Pierre Gasly has re-signed a contract with Red Bull. I think it's a 2-year extension, which is interesting considering the French driver is going to be staying at the predominantly Italian outfit, which is assisted by Red Bull. But also, just on the topic of drivers too, Vincenzo, I just wanted to like sit down with you to have an honest assessment on the smooth operator, which I think, you know what, Vincenzo, I'm gonna have to take my title back. I'm gonna have to take it back from him, man, because he's not doing that title any justice right now, and it hurts
That's for
because
sure.
that's the thing. Like he was doing so well last year. We all kind of in that kind of like mindset of him being pretty much on the same level as Charles, just because of how consistent he is and how like like I guess consistent is one way, but also just like his approach to driving and not making as many mistakes. But then this year, in like what is essentially a championship fight year, he's just not been kind of where we would want him to be in terms of, he's still not been on the top step of the podium yet. We still haven't seen his armpits, when he's spraying champagne.
Mm-hmm.
He's also had one or two, funky races. I think is a generous way of putting it. I don't think, many drivers could get away with like, not finishing a race, in what is one of the team's home Grand Prix. I get that Daniel Ricciardo did crash into him in the actual full race, but then more skeptical people could say if he had qualified better, like how Charles did, then he would have been able maybe to avoid some of the first lap drama in those like wet intermediate conditions. And just generally as well, like I sat there watching him in Canada, and that was a day where I was like, dude, Charles is way at the back. He's taking all these engine penalties. You are the talisman. And Ferrari haven't officially come out, like you said earlier in the podcast, and like clearly said, this is the number one driver, this is the number two driver. They've given, I feel like, really ample opportunities to both drivers, to fight for the championship this year. And to be fair, he did show a lot of initiative in Monaco by like defying the team orders and staying out, on the wet tires all the way until it got dry to try and save some time in the pits. But other than that, Vincenzo, I can't lie, brother. Like it's been one of those ones where I really wanted him to kind of kick on a bit, and I haven't seen that kind of that kind of like passion that we see from Charles. Like, what's your honest assessment been of Carlos? One, two, do you think Ferrari maybe made a mistake in giving him a 2-year contract instead of the traditional 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year contract that they sometimes give the lesser or like the more unknown driver in the team? And if Carlos isn't the one for you, who else would you like to see in that Ferrari seat?
Oh, that's a tough question. The first part of your question is, I think a 2-year deal was right. A constant 1-year deal, especially with someone who came in first year, had so much consistency, has great chemistry. Him and Charles seem to have so much great chemistry. He seems pretty well loved by the fans in general. I don't know. I think 1-year deals are tough. They don't show much confidence, especially in a driver that needs that confidence. I also think it came at the right time for him because they knew he needed the confidence. So to go and give him a 1-year deal after I think 2 races that he didn't finish might have really, really given him, might have hurt his confidence even more. So I think it was timing wise worked out well for him that it happened. Unfortunately for the team, of course, it almost worked out pretty well, like ironically in a weird way, where he doesn't finish these races and my contract is being dealt, but my potential because you remember what I did last year. So you want to keep my confidence high, and so he got the 2-year deal. But I think it was the right move anyway. I don't like these kind of 1-year, year-to-year things because it's just like it doesn't afford you the opportunity to be a human being, right? Like not, and I get that these athletes are supposed to be operating at their top peak performance, but there's so many things that can go wrong, right? We know it's not just the driver; it's the car. There's a team, there's strategy, like Monaco. You know what I mean? There's so many things that happen. If at the end of the year you just look at it and say, well, we didn't finish first, so now you got to go. You're the pro. First of all, that's the first thing. Second, I don't know if there's anybody else, and this I think answers your second question. I don't know if there's another driver right now that would pair with Leclerc and make the team better than it is with Sainz. Like this moment, right this second. I don't know if there's anybody on the grid that I would take. I don't know if there's anybody, driver, anything. First of all, I don't think they want to be testing things out with driver, academy driver either right now, especially with having a car that, is at the top 2-3 cars on the grid. You don't want, there's really nobody else. So to answer that question, no, I like Carlos. I don't think he's performing to what expectations we got from him last season. And again, last season he came in, he beat Charles in the champ. He beat Charles by a couple points. So I think maybe 6 points it ended up. But who else is out there? Who else would you go, would fit in that seat to ride or to be that Checo Perez for Leclerc? Checo would probably be one driver that I would love, but not. not in place of Sainz. I guess maybe if we never had Sainz, like I could see
Sure.
Checo being there. But I don't know. Other than that, who else? You're not going to put a
Well, I was gonna
Verstappen
say,
in that
Vincenzo,
seat
it's it.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, because yeah, I mean, it's hard to find somebody for that particular situation. I agree with you because it's a sticky one, and it's not that Science is a bad driver or he's completely forgotten how to drive. I just think that
Mm-hmm.
things haven't really gone his way so far in like a year where you would want to take advantage of the car being so competitive. But having said that, man, like there are a few very, very outside shots there when you look. Microphone gets pulled out of the socket. Didn't mean to do that. I hope you guys can hear me.
Okay,
But
for
no,
a
I was
second,
gonna
I
say.
thought I'm having network issues again.
No, I was just pulling a prank on you, Jorgy. But no, I just pulled the cable out of the socket accidentally. But no, just in terms of like potential like alternatives, Lando
Mm-hmm.
Norris, I guess is one guy. I know that you signed on a very long-term
No,
contract with McLaren. You're not feeling him?
I don't think he's not Ferrari material. I don't
Mm,
see it. I like the kid. I think he's nice enough. I
mhm.
just don't think that's the seat. But also, I think is too much of a peer to Charles, where it's not.
Mm,
I think they see themselves as. I don't know if they see themselves as equals, but I don't think he's exactly. He's not going to. I mean, look at he does it with Daniel, and I mean, they do it over there. He would never sit back and oh, I'm going to be second for Charles. I think with Daniel, it's kind of a unique situation, and they know that they're trying to like keep Daniel's, maybe keep Daniel's confidence up. So maybe sometimes that's why he backs down a little bit.
mhm.
Also, there's clearly leadership at McLaren, right? So they're telling him what to do, and it's like you listen to what we're telling you. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he would do well. I just I don't know. It's not. I don't have an answer, right? No one has an answer. I just don't. I don't know. He doesn't do it for me. Who else you got?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good that you mentioned that too, because it's with Lando. It's the case of I think he's got the talent to do it, but then you rightfully pointed
Sure.
out too. If we're talking about like a team dynamic, and obviously you're a fan of Ferrari, you might not want that constant friction. And with Lando, you can see that he can be quite abrasive and quite, authoritative, and like even in the relationship
Yeah.
with Daniel, he's the one trying to. I noticed even recently, like he's less jokey and he's trying to be a bit more serious out of the pair of them because
Yeah.
he wants to be taken more seriously and seen as a potential future champion. So I get that. And
Mm-hmm.
then maybe the other one I wanted to throw in the ring as well, we actually just mentioned him a second ago as well, is Pierre, because again, you've got this driver which is falling out of favor with Red Bull. So I mean, how funny would it be, in like a middle finger to one of your biggest oppositions to take basically one of their drivers? And then with Pierre Gasly as well. This is a driver that has already won a race, which Science hasn't done quite yet. This is a driver where you can see how much it's meant to him. And then thirdly of all, this is a driver that's been through a lot of hardships too, just like Leclerc in a sense. I know you mentioned that thing of like you want a driver that's not gonna be fire and fire with Leclerc, for example. But I think you would get the competitive nature between them for sure, because I don't think Gasly wants to be a number two driver. But I think it would be
Right.
more respectful between those two, because they both can speak French. Both of them have kind of like grown up in that generation of French drivers, along with
Mm-hmm.
Ocon, and seen a lot of trauma with Jules Bianchi, with Anton
So
Hubert, and stuff like
there's
that.
somebody that you just mentioned. There's somebody that I like. I like Ocon a lot.
Ocon, ooh,
I like him a lot. I like his general how he comports himself, and I think he's aggressive at times, but he's I don't know if he's necessarily the competitor, right? He's not going to be. I
mm,
don't know if he's world champion material, but I think he's definitely a good driver, and I think for I don't know. I like Ocon. I would say Ocon. Um, is he going to step back and take number two from Charles? That's kind of how I look at it. Maybe I'm looking at it the
mhm.
wrong way, but that's the mindset I'm looking at it, right? And I think that Ocon more than Pierre would.
Yeah, I see that too, and it's an interesting thing. Like in a way, there are similarities even between Ocon and Pierre Gasly. But you're right. Like Ocon just seems a lot more chilled. You've seen this dynamic as well, just with how he is with Fernando Alonso. They've got a car which they know is not a championship winning car, but they understand as well the importance of working as a team, working
Mhm.
together to try and maximize each other's performances. So you hear Fernando Alonso coming on the radio and saying, "Tell Ocon, he knows what he needs to do." When he's talking
Right.
about like backing up Lewis because he thinks that Lewis is the threat, or vice versa. Obviously, when we had that
Right.
race in Hungary last year with the crazy events that happened, there was also that kind of companionship and that kind of understanding of a team dynamic, which I think is just as
Right.
crucial. So yeah, I think
I
Ocon
like
to
Ocon.
Ferrari. That you know what, Vincenzo, you opened my
If
eyes to something there. Yeah,
again, we're talking about if Sainz wasn't there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But
Which again is
but again, I like Carlos, so maybe it's just that I can't see past Carlos right now. But I like him. I like him. I think he brings enough to the team. It's if the team was operating at 100% and they didn't have these leadership or strategy issues. I think Carlos is the absolute best fit. If we're talking about Carlos moving on at some point, who would you fill the seat? I wouldn't mind seeing Ocon there. I really wouldn't. I would love to know if people disagree with other Ferrari fans, other tifosi agree with me, but yeah, I wouldn't hate that. Like, I don't think Mick Schumacher's ready at all. That would be an absolute horrible, horrible situation to have him in. And I think Ferrari knows that too, that he's not ready. But yeah, I mean, how about even somebody like a Kevin Magnussen? That would be completely different. But a Kevin Magnussen would be, I think someone like a Magnussen would be a great number 2 to Leclerc.
Yeah, I think that's a really left field one, man. I mean, that's very out of the
Yeah, if we're
box. But
going
again,
left
I
field.
but I definitely, again, I could, with him, he is a driver where he has the ability to get performance out of a car. We've seen that he's had time out of the sport and he's got
Mm-hmm.
all of Haas's points up at this stage of the season. So you're right. And
Yeah,
then,
a little bit of experience. Not, he's not 23, 24 years old like Charles. I think I get weary of putting, two similar age drivers or drivers that came up together, right? Like, let's just say, for the sake of being completely comparing here, if you would have put someone like a Charles and a Verstappen, right? They're clearly see themselves as rivals. So to have them on the same team, I think would be just it'd
chaos.
probably be an absolute terrible situation, right?
Yeah.
But the same thing with like Lando sees himself as a rival. Again, they all kind of came up together. George, we haven't talked about George or Lewis at all, but George, and that's another one, right? Like you couldn't put George and Charles together because they both want to be number 1, right? At the end of the day, you have to realize that these teams, the way they make money is through the Constructors' Championship. So you have to maximize the amounts of points. So you need somebody who's a great driver, but maybe not, or I'm sorry, that's a very good driver, but not a great, right? That's like just behind you. So yes, you can pair a great with somebody who's a little bit less than. Or in the case of like an Alpine, you have a great driver beyond past his years paired up with a younger guy to kind of help him, teach him the ropes, that kind of thing, right? So like those types of situations work well as well. I always look at like dynamic that way. Like I always try to think of how would you pair it up 1 and 2, but I would never go with two guys that have kind of battled together or have like or too close in age like that. I just and you even Carlos and Charles. I mean, they're not. Carlos is not that much older. I mean, yeah, he's not that much older than Charles, but night and day difference in like amounts of races, right? Like how long they've been actually racing for, or in F1 and whatnot. So it's like taking all that into consideration when you're planning a team or a second driver pairing.
Yeah,
But
and
if
it's
Hamilton
so
wants to
key.
come to Ferrari, I'm happy with Hamilton coming to Ferrari.
Now that would be a title and a half, Vincenzo. That would just be
It'd be
crazy,
pretty cool.
Exactly. I mean, it's his kind of branding, and then obviously the history of Ferrari, and then Michael was the only other driver to get 7 world championships, and that was whilst he was at Ferrari. So to see Lewis kind of take that challenge on at Ferrari would be, for the sport, I think, amazing. For me as a
Let's
Mercedes
do it.
fan, I think I'd cry because he's always
Ah.
been like one of ours, and just watching him from the junior academy program with Ron Dennis and coming through the Mercedes program. I've always seen him as just like one of our own. But every driver, it must be their dream at some stage. Like Sebastian Vettel, I think summed it up greatly. To date the woman in the red dress, to say and to just have that kind of opportunity too. So you could never rule it out. Although I think, yeah, if that were to happen, it would be nuts. Whether it would happen, I don't know. It's just
I
one
don't
of
think
those
so.
things where
Yeah.
you could never say never. But if it did, that would be like, I think the earth would shatter. I think it'd be
Maybe.
like when like Messi left Barcelona. It would be that kind of thing. Like it would be that
It
kind of
probably. I
just
mean,
shock factor.
probably would be. Be
It's so
interesting.
crazy.
I'm here for interesting. I'm here for entertaining things.
Well, this is what we love, and that is the spectacle of F1 as well. So no, I agree. Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna segue Georgina back into it. So Georgina, I'll let you ask the next question.
I'll be wearing a red cap if that happens.
Beautiful. Let's turn everybody into a Ferrari fan.
Like they say, everyone's a Ferrari fan, right?
They just don't know it.
Yeah.
They don't realize it.
Well, my question to you is, this is my last question, I swear. This is
No,
my
it's okay.
last question, and this is my last financial question to you as well. Well, starting from Red Bull, all the teams are having budget cap issues, and especially Christian Horner is crying about it, saying that there will be half the grid will be not racing if the budget cap is not raised. Are they really having an issue with this economic crisis, with this budget cap?
Are they really having an issue? I believe there is a challenge. Like, if let's just take Haas for example. I believe the numbers for the 2 cars that Mick absolutely destroyed was, I forget exactly the millions of dollars it cost for each of those, but that's just one driver, and that's not even like all year. That was just 2 races, right? So I believe, yes, there is definitely a budget cap challenge. Red Bull, of course, is going to complain the most because they develop very well. I believe that Mercedes would also be complaining if they were more closely in the mix, right? If they were also, Mercedes hasn't brought their upgrades, right? They're bringing upgrades this week. Is that the case for them?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of these teams that haven't brought upgrades haven't had to spend their dollar. I don't know how they're. I also don't know exactly how they're calculating it. Do you get hit with the number as soon as you make the upgrade, or is it just kind of like this number you can't go over for the year? Like, how does it get hit? But yeah, I mean, listen, the reality of the world today is logistics costs a lot of money. You, Denz, you said right at the beginning, like gas is expensive. So to transport anything, to manufacture things aren't taking extraordinarily longer than normal. So to expedite anything is even worse now. Now. So yeah, I think it's a real issue. Now, I say it's an issue. It's an issue because of the way we've always done things, right? If we look at it the way we've always done it, sure, it's a challenge. If we look at it as, well, this is a new hurdle for teams to have to figure out, well, and that's a whole different view on it, because we could say, well, sorry, Horner, sorry, Toto, sorry, Mattia, sorry, Gunther, sorry, everybody, figure it out, or yeah, you're not, you're going to have to DQ yourself. I'm curious to see what happens if they go over the budget cap. Like, okay, well, sorry, we spent 160 million because we didn't have a choice. Our guy destroyed 3 cars during the season. I think the last thing F1, the FIA want is for teams to not enter races, right? Oh, we're at the last 3 or 4 races of the season, and you've only got 12 cars, starting a race. Like that would be awful. That would be the absolute worst thing to happen. Especially cars that maybe there's nothing wrong with. It's just, we don't have enough money to, put a new rear wing on, or we don't have enough money for the chassis or the turbo upgrade, whatever it might be, right? So that would be awful. And that would kill a lot of growth. But, they keep talking and pushing sustainability. They keep talking and pushing carbon neutrality. Yeah, the budget is going to be an issue. It's going to be a challenge, and the budget's getting lower, right? It's getting lower next year. So if teams are already having issues, it's going to surely be an issue again next year. But again, it's because you've got years and years and years of doing things a certain way, and suddenly, a budget cap gets introduced, or I don't want to say suddenly, but a budget cap gets introduced, and now you have to change the way you've always done those things. So yeah, you'll hear complaining. It's growing pains, right? Or it's just pains in general. Okay, now we have to figure it out. Teams used to complain about salary caps in other sports, and then you figure out how to make it work. I don't know what those fixes are. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know where they can cut those dollars. I know these things cost a lot of money, as any high performance machine would. But I definitely do not think that the current state of the world helps at all, because things just cost more to make. They cost more to ship and deliver to you, to wherever you have to go. So yeah, I think right, it will be a real issue. But again, Christian, Toto, any of these team principals, they're going to make the issue maybe a little bit bigger than it is, because they need to sway somebody in the FIA or in F1 to listen, hear them out, and make an adjustment, right? So yeah, you have to make it a little more grandiose. You have to make the complaint a little bit bigger than maybe it really is. But I do think it is an issue. We'll see who it's definitely gonna affect these teams that are, the teams we already seen with all these penalties, these engine penalties and whatnot. Well, you've already used your max halfway through the season, not even halfway through the season. What the heck are you gonna do for the next 11 races, right? I would actually, this is a good exercise to go for me to go look up to see if there's, I don't even know if there's a way. I haven't seen this number reported anywhere, but I'd love to see where each team stands in their kind of cap or budget. I don't know if that's published. I don't know if it's out there, but it would be interesting to see where they sit, just based on what we know or what we understand from how development works. I mean, you'd think that they would be only halfway through their budget, but some teams accelerate their development early in the season. Other teams wait till later on in the season. How does that affect the way they spend the budget cap? But yeah, I think it's less, I want to say it's less of a problem, more of a challenge they have to figure out how to overcome.
Denz, do you have a budget cap issue?
No, thankfully not. I'm all clear, even with the AMG. It's all Gucci around here. No, it's so interesting, and it's cool that we had this discussion as well, because we've had Red Bull like having this article, I think, on Sky F1, talking about like Christian Horner fearing that the F1 title might actually end up getting decided in the courts due to like cost cap and rising costs of inflation. And then also Williams had like a bit of a slap on the wrist as well, didn't they? Because they basically breached these new cost cap measures and regulations because they missed their deadline to submit their 2021 accounts, which should have been done by the 31st of March as well, which is the financial year. So there's so many examples, and it's really like broadly kind of like quite intriguing to see how it applies and affects even the top teams and even the teams struggling at the bottom as well, or trying to fight their way back up. So it makes a huge difference. And thank you, Georgina, for tapping me back in as well. Because one thing
could you imagine, Denz, or Georgina and Denz, could you imagine if, like, by the end of the year, this is not going to happen, but let's just say it did. you've got Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and like let's just say McLaren have all exhausted their budget, and we have 5 or 6 races left. This is complete over exaggeration. But let's just say 5, 6 races left. These teams have exhausted their budget and they don't enter races, which is what Horner is saying could happen, right? That could shift the championship, right? Ideally, like that could. Oh, huge numbers. So the reason I look at things that way is because I'm like, okay, that's not realistically going to happen, right? Like it's just no one's going to allow that to be the case. There's going to be some sort of adjustment, some directive, financial directive. Okay, well, we're going to allow for this, whatever. It's going to happen. But I think going forward could become an equalizer of sorts if it's, if they kind of figure out exactly how to administrate this amongst the teams. But again, like I said before, you've got teams that have done things one way for so long that now you're going to get reactions. But as this continues, as the budget cap remains a thing in Formula One, and it's, let's say we're 10 years into a budget cap era, you've got a whole new generation of cars, a whole new generation of drivers, a whole new generation of team principals, like things are. So in 10 years, this budget cap becomes a good thing. But right now, because we're at the beginning of it, it sucks for teams who never had to worry about spending or never had to worry about, development. So yeah, I think we're in just a unique position in the history of Formula One that we have to deal with it. And then once this becomes the norm, it kind of changes everything.
But don't you think that it's more like, when a kid is crying and crying and crying, asking for something, for an example, an ice cream, the parents are going to just let him cry. And then once he's done crying, he will find something else to do. So I don't think that this is also what the FIA is doing regarding the budget cap, letting the team principals cry and cry and cry and be done with it. And then when they're not doing anything at all, then they'll go and figure out another alternative to balance the budget cap or something.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think that's a whole different conversation. It's what kind of behavior is the FIA allowing and kind of cultivating, right? It's just like you saw what they had to do with the radios, right? No more direct communication because they were influencing it too much. Well, that's, this is probably one of those similar things. You're never going to tell. You can never really create a directive or something to say, oh, you know what, you can't complain anymore. This is part of the game, right? But it is a shame that the FIA as a governing body is influenced by like this public, complaining, right? So like they know, like you just said, Georgina, oh, we can go and complain about something for, we can just keep complaining until they do something about it. It is a shame. You heard it. Ocon came on the radio. I think Leclerc complained about something or whatnot, and Ocon went on the radio to complain about something because he knew the FIA was listening. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Magnussen with Magnussen's wing, right? So Ocon complained about Magnussen's front wing, which supposedly wasn't that dangerous. That's what Magnussen says. But he made it sound like it was the worst thing in the world. Oh no, it's dangerous. It's bad for everybody, knowing that the FIA was going to, or the race director and whatnot was going to make sure that Magnussen came in to change it. So like when those things, there's precedent set there, right? Oh yeah, if you just complain loud enough or you complain in the right forum, someone has to listen and someone has to do something. It just seems like that's the way to get things done. Whether it's right or wrong, we can have that discussion probably another day. It's a whole nother podcast, right? Like to figure out if that's right or wrong. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it is kind of idiotic. Like, okay, just complain about it as much as you want, and then we'll change it. That shouldn't be the case, right? It is what it is, and everyone has to play by the rules. So, can they fine a team principal for complaining too much? I don't know. I I wouldn't think so. It'd be kind
I
of a
think Red
foolish
Bull would be the
fine,
first
but
one to get excluded if that was the
oh my,
case.
oh my God, they would have been out of the championship weeks ago,
Years ago, by that logic. Yeah, I agree
years
with you,
ago. Yeah.
Vincenzo. It's the thing, but no, I mean that's the thing with Formula One. It's a very kind of politically driven sport at the best time as well, and what we've seen is how team principals go about it. And in the same way, we kind of do give Christian, I think, slack, for sometimes going over the mark or using very unconventional measures, should I say, of trying to get like the best for his team. At the end of the day, if
Hmm.
you're the team principal of a successful F1 team, and you're under pressure because if you don't deliver the results, if you let something
Exactly.
not go in your favor, then yeah, you have to kind of like put your foot down and see if you can negotiate the best deal for your people and your team ultimately. So I see it from that perspective too.
Hmm.
And with further segue, Vincenzo, as well, it's been so awesome to have you on this, week's episode as well. Just, yeah, I feel it's a really special one because it's so significant to so many things. But just generally, just like, could we do a predictions for the Silverstone Grand Prix? How do you think it's going to play out this week with talks of Mercedes bringing an upgrade? Ferrari need a W as well. And then,
Yeah.
I think the media are playing this whole narrative about Max wanting revenge for Cups last year, which is its own thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's that it's the low hanging fruit for the media to play off that. I'm sure we'll hear tons more about last season, last race, because of how dramatic it was. But I think we will see a Mercedes on the podium. Um, George and Lewis George has been absolutely consistent all season. He's been I really don't think he's put a foot wrong in that Mercedes all year. The car just hasn't been there. But if the car, if they can bring developments like they're going to, I think that bodes well for them. Lewis obviously podium last week. I think that's his second podium of the year, right? Second or third for Lewis.
I think it's
Second.
second. Yeah.
Yeah. First race of the season, and then last week. So and the car seemed to be a little bit better. Again, I don't focus so much on the Mercedes, but like seemed to be a little bit better last week. So I think there'll be a Mercedes on there. Unfortunately, I do think a Red Bull will also probably win the race, but I do think it'll be Perez. He needs to bounce back after last week, and he has been driving really well. And one of the Ferraris will get on the podium. So I think we'll get all three teams on the podium, all three of those top teams on the podium, with Red Bull taking the win. But yeah, that's where I think this week.
I think that's a realistic and really interesting take as well. And I think it will be a similar thing too with, Mercedes really pushing the envelope to try and secure any performance of the W13.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we mentioned as well, Ferrari still have a good car. I just think it's a case of reliability and making sure that, the car is quick, which at Silverstone, interestingly enough, as high speed as it is, you need downforce for all those long sweeping corners. So that
Mm-hmm.
also plays quite a big effect in it as well. But yeah, technically, you would also have to say Red Bull have the strongest package at the moment, and they're quite charged up. And even Max, it doesn't seem like he's leaving any stone unturned this year. He's even talking about
Yeah.
them trying to tweak the car, so it's even more competitive in qualifying to stop Leclerc from being able to get track position at the beginning of the races and trying to just kind of snuff any advantage that Ferrari have remaining left. So, like you mentioned, I think
I
it's going
don't
to be
think
so
we'll
balanced.
see. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see. I would hope that we don't. Not that I would hope. I don't want to see this, but I believe that Ferrari will end up having to dial down on Saturdays to make sure that they're reliable on Sunday. That is the focus so far this season seems to be Saturday, and they're so concerned about Saturdays that either out too much on Saturdays, and obviously we had all these issues on Sundays, but I think they need to worry about race pace. On race pace and the qualifying, they have a car that's clearly competitive. They have a car that is clearly, superior to a lot of others on the grid. So they can make things happen in the race. They just need to focus on on the race, and not just qualifying, not just Saturdays. But the Red Bull, man, like you said, it just looks so freaking just good. It just seems like whatever they do, but the reliability factor always comes into it. So we never know. The most reliable car on the track looks like the Mercedes every week. So that's where I think you guys, you Mercedes fans, can take a little bit of positivity away, is because that car, once they figure out a few things, can be pretty quick.
Exactly that, and that's the thing as well. This Vincenzo, it's such an interesting dynamic because it's like slow and steady wins the race. And although Mercedes have been incredibly slow by their own standards, reliability wins points at the end of the day. And you've seen like what 100-point swing between Charles and Max just on reliability alone, because Max didn't have that at the beginning of the season, now he does. But then vice versa, Charles had at the beginning, but now he doesn't. So now it's just such a big kind of like deal in the way that this championship's going to pan out. And
Mm-hmm.
just seeing how from week to week you might put your hat on one car, but then through some sort of miraculous event it changes. And for that reason alone, my F1 fantasy team's going to absolute crack right now. So yeah, there's always that kind of feature too. So before we end the stream, or before we end this podcast as well, Vincenzo, Georgina wanted to implement a new segment to the show as well. We're going to call it the Mean Tweets segment. So I think it's kind of akin to Jimmy Kimmel's like mean tweets, where celebrities or like
Celebrities
guests.
read their tweets. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's not necessarily about us. I hope it wouldn't. Even though we're always open to constructive tweets, but yeah, just like funny tweets and stuff like that. And that's the next thing. We're really trying to push the social media platform for Strip the Dip. It's one of those things as well. We want to reach out to you guys on that platform. We want to get more engagement. We want to hear from you guys and get opinions and constructive and philosophical debates happening. So yeah, I'll go with the first one that I saw as quite funny. I think this week leading up to Silverstone, we had the annual Festival of Speed at Goodwood, just a couple of miles down the road from Silverstone, where you get all these classic cars and Ferraris and classic race cars as well. And I think Nigel Mansell was there. George Russell was there too, doing a demo run. And what was the W10 Mercedes F1 car skinned as a W12, which
Mm-hmm.
was last year's car. But I looked at the back of it and I could see some like brown marks and like some holes. So I was thinking maybe the engine was overheating or they had some cooling. Because as well, Vincenzo, like, man, I don't know how often you're back in Europe. I know you go to Italy often and stuff like that too. But in England, we actually had like a heat wave. Like people were struggling with like 28 degrees, man, which I don't know what the conversion is in
Wow.
Fahrenheit for you guys over there. But in the UK,
It's about 82 degrees Fahrenheit.
okay. Because for us, that is like a miracle. Like we never get that weather. So yeah, even the poor W10 struggled with the heat, and it had kind of these holes and burn marks on it. So I reached out to our technical guest, Dr. Obbs, and I was like, dude, what was happening with the car? Why is it overheating? And he just cheekily said, oh, I think the W10 might have had an accident, because of the brown stains. So yeah, I thought that was pretty mean. So that's my kind of first mean tweet, and the only one I have, because this is a segment that I was already informed about literally 5 minutes before we started the podcast. So that's my excuse. For Georgina, what were your two mean tweets that you wanted to bring on in this week's episode?
Okay, so this one is really mean. Okay, so I just took this one from one of the, Quick Stop F1. Shout out to them. Well, this is actually one of the reply tweets that they have received. It says, this is from Tenants, I think. Yeah. So it says, this is me as a black man telling you this. You don't give a peek about Rips being racist. You just wanted to make a Red Bull bad video, all because you haven't gotten over a race from 6 months ago. People like you and your bum ass fan base ruin this sport. Louis wouldn't even like you lot. That's the peak. Wow. That's really mean. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're terrible. And you know what? Georgina, like on the topic of that as well, the whole Yuri Vips thing has been crazy. And I think we'll save that for another episode because I know we're going long on this one. But yeah, just there's no excuse for discrimination, and there's definitely no place in it in terms of where we're trying to achieve diversity and inclusivity for everybody, race, color, gender, religion. It just has no place. So when I see people like that, trying to troll the Quick Stop F1 account, I just laugh at people like them because they have no common sense, they have no kind of understanding or empathy of what's happening around the world. And I think it's fans like that where I don't even really consider them fans because they're not here for the good of the sport or for the people of the sport. They're just there to troll and be mean. And yeah, with this whole mean tweet segment as well, guys, we keep it respectful, of course. It's about having light-hearted fun. Yeah, we're not into the whole kind of like negative kind of thing. I think there are channels that do that, and by all means, if you want to go to them, do it. But shout out to Nyasha as well for just being so brave and calling out, the hypocrisy that we see in that Red Bull and a lot of it's not just Red Bull. Racism is like a problem that all the teams, I'm sure, probably have to tackle, in the upcoming years and do more to be more inclusive and to do more to change their working practices. Because you even see old timers like Bernie Eccleston giving it a lot of mouth in places where he has no like say or he shouldn't have any say because he doesn't know enough on that kind of topic to speak on it. So there's that. But yeah, Georgina, sorry, I'll let you do the next one.
Oh, yeah. I was like thinking about the racist issues that we've been tackling on Twitter as well. Then, anyways, yeah, that's the total another episode. So this one, the last tweet that I'm gonna say is bit funny, and this is from one of our guests currently on the podcast right now. This is one of Vincenzo's tweets. It says, "Every time I have tried to switch because Samsung devices are nice, I always go back because of the platform."
Yep.
Hey, so
Who
Vincenzo,
is
you
that
team Apple?
from?
Team Apple all the way, my friend.
Woo woo woo.
Yeah, I can't do the Android people. The worst thing is using iMessage and texting someone with and then getting the green bubbles. It's just the worst thing. That's why I get everyone use WhatsApp, but everyone uses WhatsApp, so it's like you end up using iMessage and you get a lot of green bubbles when you text Android folks. It's awful. No, but really, I've tried to switch. I have switched quite a few times because I love the Samsung devices. I think they're fantastic, but I don't love the operating system. It's again, it's what you're used to, right? I just got used to my Apple, and I want to stick to what I like and know, and that's it.
That's the thing, there's a platform for everybody, but yeah, I'm definitely team Apple as well,
Mm-hmm.
man. Like Android is yeah, it's a very uncharted area. Let's leave it on that note. But Vincenzo, I wanted to leave the final word for you, man. Like, like where can people follow you? Not that people won't know who you are because man, you're one of the goats, man. So shout out to you. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I have to big you up every time, bro, because it means a lot to us, to me, to obviously, Georgina as well, to just have your time, and it's so fascinating, to follow kind of what you're doing. So, for all of our new listeners as well, now that we're getting more exposure, what are you up to these days? And is there anything that, that you think they're going to want to follow, and where can they find you on everything?
Just Twitter at Vincenzo Landino is the best place. It's where I'm most responsive and where I spend the majority of my social media time. Actually, that's where I spend the majority of my social media time is on Twitter. And while we were recording this, I wanted to go back to Georgina's comment about or question about the FIA, and they are, by the way, the FIA. The way they make money is all entry fees, even super. I forgot to mention it, but their super licenses for the drivers. All of that is paid into the FIA. I don't believe the FIA operates with a very, very large number, their dollars or financial number, and so that's where most of their stuff comes from, is from the entry fees for drivers, teams, races, organizers, that kind of thing, and then they do have some rights deals as well. So I did want to make sure I got back to that because I felt bad that I didn't really have an answer for you, but I wanted to make sure I got you somewhat of an accurate answer.
Well, I'm satisfied there, Vincenzo, and that's the thing. The thing I love about this platform is that it's an amazing like platform. Like I try to find another word for platform, but yeah, it's an amazing platform for like learning and teaching each other, and just even through listening to you, man. Like you're so knowledgeable on the commercial side of it, the business side of it. You're so successful in your own life as well. So just to kind of have these conversations with you, and just to kind of appreciate the sport from different perspectives, it's so awesome. And I'm really
Yeah.
praying that that's going to be, a continued theme for this program moving forward. And just generally as well, that we can reach out to you even more often and we can get you more engaged and, like bring in different people as well to ask the questions that need to be asked. And also, yeah, like it's interesting as well to have the dynamic of Georgina in here as well, Georgina.
What?
Okay, she's clearly just thinking about the ice cream that she owes me, so I'll leave her out of it for now. But
Ice cream.
I was actually thinking about it, to be honest. I was like gonna say I do have a debt to collect. I mean, I'm supposed to pay somebody with ice creams, and I keep on piling up the debts that I have.
so the
So
FI
you're
is
just
in
like
debt
the
and
FIA then.
Georgina's in debt.
Yeah, we're
Georgina
both in
is the
it.
FIA.
I'm just glad that we had Vincenzo over because there's nobody else for us to ask these financial questions other than you because you're very knowledgeable. And like I said earlier, you're convincing. I think you should be in the political world.
Oh no, that is one thing I hate politics. But it seems like you have to know how to play the game sometimes, which is what we talked about, right? With people like Horner complaining, they know how to play the game, and that's kind of the political aspect of it. But it does not excite me at all.
Yeah, true. Um, well, I was going to ask more questions, and then I remembered that's a totally different episode because there were guns issues, and those are political ones. I don't want to talk about it right now. So yeah, I am so grateful that you actually came back for another episode, and we hope to get you back again on an episode as well. And I had fun today because I learned a lot. Basically, what we do is when we ask questions from guests like you, when you guys give us the answers, we learn a lot. Just like Denzel said, we learned a lot. So I appreciate your time as well. And Denzel's, he's doing marvelous work, to be honest.
I'm just a normal guy from North London. It's
Yeah, you keep
it's
saying that.
the no, but honestly, it's the guests like Vincenzo and the audience as well, which are incredible. And I continue to hope that we touch the lives of many people. On a completely side note, I went to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers, on a Saturday, and the
Oh,
band members,
nice.
yeah, they're awesome, Vincenzo. I was sitting there and I was like,
Love the Chili
Flea, Anthony Kiedis, John Frusciante, they're all in their 60s and 70s and still just doing what they love. And just to kind of see, even at their age, they're getting on and they're getting older now, just how important health is and having that kind of reciprocity of like, just that love and passion for things, and I hope that everybody listening, you get that opportunity as well to do the things that you enjoy, to go out there and make the most of the world, and to just be positive, because not everything goes to plan. Sometimes you have to like, think outside the box, or you have to take a loss to make a W, as they say. But just keep your head up, keep going, keep moving, and you always get to where you need to go. And it's amazing that we get inspirational people like Vincenzo as well. It's really huge. So yeah, on that note, I don't want it to become like a motivational podcast because there's millions of those
Peppers.
out there. But just generally speaking, yeah, love all the fans, all the audience, all the followers, all the guests, Georgina's, the boss, as you know. And yeah, just make sure that you keep engaged. Make sure you follow Vincenzo on socials as well. Make sure you follow us, of course, because we're trying to grow the YouTube channel. We're going to try and get some live streams on the YouTube channel as well. That's going to be fun, and do some more crazy stuff with the YouTube channel, which is going to be cool. And as also just, please as well to subscribe to the Strip the Dip Twitter account. It literally is at Strip the Dip, so make sure you go and follow that as well. And yeah, massive thank you to everybody for the time. That's the most valuable thing in life as well, with health, and yeah, just having great people around you too. So on that note of stripping the dipping, it's been your usual co-host, AMG Denz, aka Chocolate Superman. And yeah, it's been an awesome, awesome episode. So thank you all, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.